Whether it's to trade, free agency, or the NBA draft, General Manager Will Dawkins will want to add more talent. Could any of these five players that we're about to talk about be an option? Let's talk about it next on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Brandon Scott again, and I appreciate you guys making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you can start with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, everybody, a lot to talk about tonight. Like I said, we're going to look at five underrated talents that could be added to the Washington Wizards rebuild to make this team younger and better. We're also going to look at three things I'd like to see in tomorrow night's preseason finale versus the New York Knicks and Anthony Gill. Today is his birthday. But why could he be probably the most important piece to this rebuilding puzzle for the Washington Wizards? So we're going to talk about all that and more. Let's start off with the five underrated talents that the Washington Wizards could add. Now, like I said, when I talked to General Manager Will Dawkins earlier, about 3 weeks ago, really, and I asked about adding talent. He said, look, we're going to take any avenue to acquire young talent to this team, whether it's through trade, whether it's through free agency, or whether it's through the draft. They want to get younger. They will be younger a lot sooner than later, especially after the deadline. So he's going to look to add young talent by any means. So these next five guys are guys where, they are very intriguing options to add to the Washington Wizards. So this article is to the Wizard of Oz. So again, shout out to Wizard of Oz. This article was written by Blyce Malley. So shout out to them. And it says the five underrated talents the Wizards should try to acquire this season. So there are five players. So we're going to take a look at these. So before I get to these five players, like I said, Will Dawkins made it known that they're going to go younger. They're going to a lot sooner than later, man. Especially after the deadline, it's going to be a younger team. You see a lot of these veterans off the roster, man. They're going to be moved for assets at some point this offseason, or not this offseason, but this trade deadline or next year's offseason. But here's the thing. Looking at the roster right now, it is not an in-game roster. We're not the finished product right now. You were still in a transition era, not year, because last year was kind of a transition year. But if you look at a lot of the veteran talent we already have, we're still in transition. Moving a lot of these veteran contracts and making this team younger, because eventually there will be a youth movement in DC. Will Dawkins said it, that is the vision here for this team going forward with this front office, is that eventually they're going to start a youth movement. Because right now, looking at players like Kyle Kuzma, players like Jordan Poole, they're carrying a lot of the offensive weight for players like Bilal Coulibaly and Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Bob Carrington. And the reason for that, allow them time to develop. And when it's time for them to take a step forward, take on more responsibility, take on more minutes, being in starting unit together and build that chemistry going forward, this, like I said, that is the vision going forward, man, is that eventually it will be a youth movement. So let's take a look at these five players real quick. Number one, Jalen Hood-Schifino of the Los Angeles Lakers. All right, so we know that players like Jonas Valanciunas, even Kyle Kuzma, have been named as possible trade targets for the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, looking at Jonas Valanciunas, they need a center. They need more depth behind Anthony Davis. And looking at Kyle Kuzma, he is very familiar with that organization. So looking at the 6'4" guard who, seen by some experts as a potential lottery pick last year, he's a very intriguing young guard. Now, if you look at the situation here in DC at guard, especially point guard, right now Jordan Poole is the starter. Bob Carrington is definitely part of the future, whether it is in the same backcourt with Jordan Poole, whether it's taking over lead guard duties. Right now, we don't know. But, you look at other players, Malcolm Brogdon is definitely a veteran who's going to be moved at some point, and Jared Butler is depth. This is last year of his contract that is guaranteed. So it's your long-term piece. We shall see. But this kid could be a nice young guard to be the backup guard. Because eventually, like I said, with a lot of these moves, with a lot of potential moves, especially if you're looking at young players for the Washington Wizards, a lot of that has to do with future moves made, right? Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma. And, these are two guys where, yes, they've made known that they like DC. They're liked by the organization. But here's the thing. It's all good and well, but you have to perform. Like I said, looking at Kyle Kuzma, yes, he's a small business owner. He likes the organization, but here's the thing. You had to perform. This is a team that eventually wants to be a championship team. That should be the goal, the end goal for all teams. But for this team, The end goal is a championship, an NBA title, if not more than one, creating a dynasty, creating a sustainable winner. And you have to perform. You have to perform. So, like I said, a lot of moves, especially adding young talent, has to do with what moves do they want to make, whether it's at the deadline this year or next year in the offseason. But don't get it twisted. A lot of players, especially Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole, are playing to be those featured pieces here in DC. And I think we all agree that Kyle Kuzma, is he a long-term piece? No. He's probably not going to be here past the 3 years of his contract. He'll probably be somewhere else. That is a definite bet. Looking at Jordan Poole, a little different. He's a guy that, he's shown that he likes DC, he wants to be in DC. But here's the thing, that's all good and well. You have to perform. And while he's been given the opportunity to be the starting point guard, and a lot of people, including myself, are definitely, really excited to see what he can do being the full-time starting point guard. But here's the thing, he's got to perform. The sample size has been up and down in the preseason. Same thing with Kyle Kuzma. He has not looked well. He had one good game out of preseason. Hopefully both of them show out against the Knicks at home. I think they will, preseason finale. But, any moves, especially when you consider any of these players, has to do with future moves made, because Jonas Valanciunas is not a long-term piece. He's going to be moved at some point. Malcolm Brogdon, Saddiq Bey, we'll see. But, let's get into this. So, like I said, I do like Jalen Hood-Schifino, especially as a backup guard on the second unit for the Washington Wizards. This is right here. Though they ended up holding on to the 2024 selection and selected Dalton Knecht, LA can still deal the 2029 and 2031 picks to solidify the rotation. Hood-Schifino, the number 17 pick in the 2023 draft, is a candidate to be included in any move the Lakers make in 2024 and 2025. So look, if you have the opportunity to pick up the Lakers 2029 or 2031 picks, you make that move. And if it includes Hood-Schifino, you make that move, because he's a young guard who, is he looked at as the future at point guard or even a two guard in DC? Probably not. Probably going to be a depth piece. But like I said, the power of the role players coming back. The NBA is changing. The super teams just aren't a thing anymore like it was 5-10 years ago. If it's going back to really the 90s days, where role players, having certain players around your marquee guys who fit is the name of the game. And so right now, he would be a really good role player for a team that wants to get younger, but wants to eventually be a contending team at some point. All right, the second player on the list, Jericho Sims of the New York Knicks. Now, the Knicks center rotation was looking thin after Isaiah Hartenstein's departure to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and Mitchell Robinson's ankle injury will keep him out for a decent chunk of the season. So that brings in Jericho Sims, fourth-year big out of Texas. Now, if you look at right now, obviously the Knicks just picked up Karl-Anthony Towns, sending Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo to the Minnesota Timberwolves. But Sims is a nice young player, because if you look at Rashawn Holmes, 2-year contract, but he's definitely a guy that are going to showcase, and he's going to be moved at some point. Marvin Bagley III, expiring contract. So both of their contracts will be off the books in 2 years. Sims could be a cheap option with little risk and decent upside. And so, like I said, I'm reading a lot of this off of Wizard of All, so they bring up a lot of good points, and a lot of these obviously my personal points, but he's a cheap option at center. Now you have Tristan Vucevic, so you want to give some minutes to Tristan Vucevic to sooner or later, definitely in the second half of the season coming up. You definitely think that Marvin Bagley III is probably going to be on his way out. At his age, if he shows that he can contribute, could he be a piece to stay here in DC? Absolutely. His age, if you look at his age, it mirrors Saddiq Bey, Corey Kispert, Jordan Poole. And that's what I'm saying. All these guys, these veterans, especially at around age 25, the ball's in their court. If they want to be part of the future here in DC, they have to perform. So like I said, I don't think that Jordan Poole, even though I'm a big Jordan Poole fan, I think that he very well could be in the future here, even though I could see a scenario where he's moved at some point also. But, they're going to get younger, and the ball's in their court to perform. If they want to be part of the future, they have to show that they want to be part of this. So you see that a lot of guys who are around the 25 years of age, like Saddiq Bey. Now Corey Kispert is a guy that, like I said, they have to the 21st to re-sign him. So I definitely see them retaining him because you need a sniper. You need a high basketball IQ player on your team. He forms a really good tandem with Keyshawn George. So I think Corey Kispert, sign him, man. I make it known. I'm gonna say it time and time again. Re-sign Corey Kispert, keep him here in DC. So, like I said, you could see Jordan Poole. Like I said, very intrigued to see what he can do as the starting point guard under a full season, especially under head coach Brian Keefe. And in the Saddiq Bey, he could come back later, the last quarter of the season and see what he can provide. Even though he's a DMV guy and he can definitely play at a high level. So, like I said, it is really 3 categories, man. You have players who are definitely veterans who are going to be moved at some point. Gray area players where they could be dealt, but he also could be part of the equation going forward. And you have rookies who are definitely long-term prospects here in DC. So we have 3 players to talk about real quick, and then we're going to get into the 3 things I want to see for tomorrow night's preseason finale. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, y'all, tonight's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. So, hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view, live, play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, everybody, let's get back into this. We got 3 more players to talk about real quick. Our next player on the list is not so much a young player, but a guy who could be a nice role player and is an improving guy on a team where they don't necessarily need him anymore, and that is Jae'Sean Tate of the Houston Rockets. 28 years old. He's older and a little more proven than the players on his list, but look, Houston is loaded. A lot of talent in Houston. And what do they need? A backup point guard. This is where Malcolm Brogdon comes in. Any potential move there where you could potentially move Malcolm Brogdon, Jae'Sean Tate would not be a bad addition to this team. Yes, he's a vet, but look, young teams need vets. If you look at Anthony Gill, who we're about to talk about, he's got as much needed, and he is a very pivotal piece to this team, in my opinion. So, like I said, Tate, 20 years old, but he was a good contributor for a bad Rockets team. So, his minutes have declined, but he's a guy who could be a nice fit on the wing. Yes, he's a little undersized as far as wing, but he's a really good defender who can produce when called upon on the offense without having the ball in his hands. All right, number 2, and we already covered this, I believe, a week ago, or if not 2 weeks ago, Jarris Walker of the Indiana Pacers. They were rumored to be very interested in him, and we actually did draft him, but he was flipped to Indiana for Bilal Coulibaly. Now, if you look at the minutes he has with Indiana, he has not gotten the minutes that I definitely think that he expected, being a lottery pick. And he's a guy, he's a burly power forward who can defend both in the post and on the perimeter. We need more defenders. He's a guy who could definitely slot next to Alex Sarr if you're looking at future fit. And right now, especially he could really provide as a safety cushion for Alex Sarr in the front court while Alex Sarr develops that 3-point shot and rim protection, even though the rim protection is already there. But he and Walker, Alex Sarr, that is, could be a really nice inside-out combination, kind of like what the Pacers envisioned with him and Miles Turner. So, and again, another thing to look at, they did re-sign Pascal Siakam to a 4-year, $189 million contract. So, and extended his backup, Obi Toppin, for 4 years, $60 million. So it looks like he is added to the equation in Indiana. So could the Wizards acquire him? Absolutely. I think that if you look to make any moves to acquire young players this year, we already talked about Jaden Ivey previous episode. Look, Will Dawkins told me to my face, out of the horse's mouth, they're going to find any ways to acquire young talent, whether it's trade, free agency, or the draft. Even though we all know the draft is the #1 option, and really they're going to utilize the trade market as a supplement the draft. I don't see them for a while being very active in free agent, unless they pick up guys and win your contracts or pick up veterans they want to flip at some point. But here's the thing. I see this team being very younger, and I think there's going to be a youth movement past the deadline this season. So any contract signed within the next couple of years are going to be 1-year deals where there's going to be for depth and maybe to try to move them for some assets. But I think that most of the veterans on the contract right now on the roster are going to be moved for assets, and it's going to be a youth movement after the deadline. So let's get into the last underrated talent for the Washington Wizards, and this is the one I really, really like. Moses Moody of the Golden State Warriors, a guy who could play the 2, he can play the wing. He's a guy who is a good defender who shot 36% from 3 all 3 of his seasons in Golden State. A 3-and-D guy who, look, and like I said, to add a player like Moses Moody, a decision would have to be made with Jordan Poole and Bub Carrington. Obviously, Bub Carrington is a long-term piece. Jordan Poole could be. But if they look to move on from him and they look at Bub Carrington as being that lead guard of the future, adding a defensive-minded 2 guard who is still young, who still fits the timeline, because I believe he is, I had his age, I want to say 22. I have to double check. Let me go ahead and do that. But I mean, like I said, Moses Moody is a guy who, and I've said it over the years, man, that if you have a lead guard who may not be a defensive-minded guard, you want a guy in the backcourt who is. Oh, yeah, he's 22 out of Little Rock, Arkansas. So 22 years old. So he fits the timeline of what they're trying to do. Very, very young. Yes, all players that were drafted under Will Dawkins are 20 and below, but 22, couple years, he's not breaking the timeline. So he would be a really good addition to this team. Especially, if you look at potential moves that can be made to Golden State. Kyle Kuzma has been a player over the last couple of years who was rumored to be a target for the Golden State Warriors. And they're a team where they have a lot of young talent. They have Stephen Curry still on the roster, Draymond Green still on the roster. We all know that Klay Thompson is now a Dallas Maverick. So they're in flux right now. Do they still want to hold on to these older pieces, or do they want to flip them at some point? Like I said, I was looking at potential moves like LaMelo Ball from Charlotte, sending Stephen Curry home and, bringing in an intriguing piece that can match and really play well with Kuminga and Moses Moody. But like I said, if they're looking to add talent to make a final run with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green, I think Moses Moody is definitely a guy that you look to pick up. He doesn't appear to be Steve Kerr's favorite either. He's gotten a number of DMPs during his career and has never played more than 17 and a half minutes per game. Look, let's free this brother, man. Let's give him a DC. He's, to me, if I look at his list real quick before we move on, the players that I would definitely target would be Moses Moody. Definite. I would definitely go after Jarris Walker. Jayshawn Tate, nice veteran piece. I mean, if you look at the move, a player like Malcolm Brogdon to Houston, you could definitely pick him up as a veteran guy on the second unit. Jericho Sims, I like to see what we do with Tristan Vucevic first before we decide to add another young center, to be honest. And Jalen Hood-Schifino is definitely, if you are intent on moving on from Jordan Poole or Jared Butler, and obviously Malcolm Brogdon, he's a young guard that I'm very intrigued to see what he can do on a rebuilding team. Because, like I said, the youth movement is going to be here at some point, and it's going to be here at the deadline. So a lot of dominoes need to fall. A lot of decisions need to be made in DC before we get a clear picture of who is and who isn't part of the future. So let's look at three things we're going to get into tomorrow night's last preseason game, the finale, tomorrow night against the New York Knickerbockers. So we're going to get into three things I'm going to see from this team tomorrow night, and then we're going to get into Anthony Gill, because today was Anthony Gill's birthday. So definitely shout out to him. But could he be the most important piece on this team going forward? And I'm going to say yes. So let's get into tomorrow night. So tomorrow night is the preseason finale for the Washington Wizards. They'll be at home against the New York Knickerbockers at 7 o'clock at Cap One. Now, looking at the injury situation right now, Landry Shamet, former Wizard from last year, he had a shoulder injury, so he is day-to-day. And Mitchell Robinson is out with an ankle injury at center for the New York Knicks. Now, Malcolm Brogdon is still out. He underwent surgical procedure to repair a ligament tear to his right thumb. So his status is, they haven't really put a timetable out yet. I kind of put one out for you guys, but he's going to be out for a little bit. So it's definitely a hit, especially if you look at depth at point guard. But I think Jared Butler will pick up the slack, man. He has proven that. So what are three things I want to see? Well, number one, looking at Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole, I want them to step up and be those alpha scorers for us, man. Look, we know Bilal ain't quite there. We know Alex Sarr shows glimpses, just like Bilal. What they can do offensively, but they're not quite there. We need Kyle Kuzma and Jordan Poole to step up and be that 1-2 punch, to be that threat offensively where we can find opportunities to free up everybody else, to find opportunities to collapse his defense and get the ball in the hands of Bilal and Alex Sarr, to utilize that, shooters like Keyshawn George, Corey Kispert, Kyle Kuzma, so what I'm looking from both of them, shooting high percentage shots, taking good looks, man, using your game to get other people involved. All right, number two, I already talked about him. Bilal Coulibaly and Alex Sarr. Step it up a little bit. We know they're developing, but here's the thing. The ball in the hands, that's where Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma come in. Get them the ball, help put them in positions where they can develop and, definitely see what they can do offensively. But when called upon, they have to perform. You definitely want to look, especially looking at Bilal. Now, with Alex Sarr, you do see the potential offensively. The rim protection, his defense is going to be the first part of his game that you're going to see. With Bilal, you want to see some progress year two. And this is where he comes in. Want to see him definitely take a step forward this year. And with this game, definitely I want to win. I want them to beat New York Knicks tomorrow night because I want the momentum to carry over to the regular season. So, like I said, the season's right around the corner, man. And I believe it's the 24th. Against the Boston Celtics at home. So we are this close. Next week is the regular season. So I'm excited. I know you're excited. Let's get this thing rolling. So momentum is a thing in all sports. Look, I want to see them carry that momentum over. And I want to see Bilal Coulibaly really take that step forward. And I think it starts with this game. All right. Number three, ball security, lack of turnovers. We have got to stop this. There's a game this preseason where we had 30 turnovers. Last game was 19. Ball security. And I'm going to say it again. ball security. Look, protect the ball, man. Definitely have to bring these turnovers down. You look at, somebody brought this up, and I forget who, but when I figured out, I'll definitely shout them out. But they made a comment about Tyus Jones and how, if you look to a certain degree, he has missed. If you look at the fact that with his turnover to assist ratio, elite numbers. Turnovers weren't not that bad of an issue when he was point guard. With Jordan Poole, with him becoming the first, full-time starting point guard, he's going to make mistakes. And I think that we should definitely give him the opportunity to make those mistakes. But here's the thing. Ball security is golden in any sport, especially basketball and football. Turnovers don't happen too much in baseball. But, football and basketball, you turn the ball over, chances are you're going to lose the game. You cannot turn the ball over 19 to 30 times and expect to win that game. And you shouldn't win. In my opinion, if you commit 30 turnovers, 19 turnovers, you have no business winning that game because it shows a total lack of ball security. And so they have turnovers. They have to stem the turnovers. Ball security, communication offensively, definitely moving out the ball, not playing hot potato and holding to the ball through the shot clock and then, passing somebody to lit it off real quick. Fluent ball movement. So these are three things I definitely want to see from this team going forward, especially tomorrow night with the preseason finale against the New York Knicks. So again, everybody, definitely show out. We will be going live like we do every game. So we'll be going live. It's 7:00 at Capital One. Lowest price right now for tickets is around $22. So if you want to go, you should be able to grab some tickets on the cheap and be able to watch the preseason finale against the New York Knicks. So, all right, everybody. Anthony Gill, today was Anthony Gill's birthday. So why is he probably the most important piece on this team? Well, I'm going to give you guys several reasons why real quick. But before we do, tonight's episode is brought to you by Hims. So look, guys, sometimes, especially the older we get, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously and sometimes we're ill prepared for that, right? This is where Hims comes in. Hims is a changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted erectile dysfunction treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and the generics for up to 95% cheaper. I'm trying to tell y'all. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable conversation with your doctor. And all you have to do is answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option for you. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. Look, we all go there, man, especially older gentlemen like myself. Look, we all hit that point at some point. Don't feel bad. Look, we all hit there. So look, Hims is here to help y'all out. So look, start your free online visit today at hims.com/locked on. That's HIMS.com/locked on for your personalized erectile dysfunction treatment options. HIMS.com/locked on. Thank you guys for making Locked On Wizards your first listen today. Appreciate y'all. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA season previews on Locked On NBA. From the East and West contenders to the potential tanking teams like us. A 6-episode series with everything you need to know about the NBA season. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, everybody, let's get into this. And first time ad for him, so definitely a learning experiment there. Anthony Gill, my guy, man. Today was his birthday. Turned 32 years old today. Anthony Gill out of High Point, North Carolina. So, like I said, Anthony Gill, definitely want to shout out Anthony Gill. Happy birthday, my guy. But why could he be the most important piece on this young team? Well, I'm gonna give you, really a couple good reasons. But number one, he has, outside of Kyle Kuzma, like I said, a lot of people do agree with me on the assessment that Kyle Kuzma has been that veteran leader here. And, he has, when you look at when Bradley Beal was here, should have been him, but it wasn't. It was Kyle Kuzma. But Anthony Gill does not get enough recognition or love for the leadership he's provided. And I'm the type of person when I go to games, when I cover the team at games, I'm a very observant person. I look around, and one thing I noticed about him early on was, he never really sits on the bench per se. He's a guy who sits on one knee at the baseline. And that's why I think he's going to be a coach. He's a guy who observes the game. But if you look at every timeout, he's the first guy out there. He's been very vocal with talking to a lot of young guys. UVA product, he's definitely familiar with the area. He's a guy who he's, outside of obviously the young talent here, he's one of the most important pieces we have on this team. Straight up, bar none. And there was actually an article that came out that kind of supports my, because I wanted to talk about this anyway. You know, it is his birthday. I want to give him some love. But and Inside the Wizards on SI, they did come out with a paper on it. I'd say paper like I'm 50 years old. An article. It says the Wizards veteran key part of youth movement. The Washington Wizards have value in a seldom playing veteran, and it goes on to say that it's all about figuring out which players fit the timeline for the team's future and learning which players don't. Chances are that Anthony Gill, who turns 32 later this week, or this obviously is today, but isn't part of the Wizards' future. However, the fifth-year veteran re-signed with the Wizards on a 2-year deal this off season. So, yeah, we all know that what he provides outside of leadership, as far as on the court, he's a hustle guy. You know, he's a high basketball IQ guy. He's a guy that, you know, a lot of the things that he does, you can't exactly fit into a statistical category, but he's been a really, really good player for this team, a really good source of knowledge and wisdom for a lot of these young players. And to me, for what he's already done and what he's going to provide for this young core, he is one of the most important, and not the most important piece on this team, because he's a guy he's a glue guy. He's a guy that keeps everybody together. You know, he is a guy that works a lot with these young guys, and he's very active in the community. Like I said, this earlier, you know, I believe it was a month ago, you saw, you know, Jordan Poole doing stuff for the community in Washington, D.C. You saw Bob Carrington in his native city of Baltimore. But Anthony Gill did a lot of work in Alexandria, Arlington, Virginia. So you love to see this team not only reach out to D.C. proper, but also put in that work and be more areas like Montgomery County, PG County, Maryland, and areas like, you know, Virginia, whether it's Fairfax County, where there's, you know, like I said, they're doing great work with the community and really taking advantage of and trying to tap into the potential of the major market of DMV, because this team has really treated the Wizards at times in the past as a small market team. But the DMV, the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area is a major market, if not one of the biggest areas, if not the biggest area in the country. Loudoun County, Virginia, for the last 20 years has been the fastest growing county in the country outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I believe Denver, Colorado. So this is an area where it has been growing more and more. Yes, a lot of that has to do with a lot of people coming from out of the area who either work for the federal government or work for Fortune 500 companies or defense contracting companies, but it is a major market. So getting back to the point of that, I like what it's doing when it comes to not only giving back to DC and their community, but also Maryland, be more, you know, Virginia. So, and Anthony Gill has a lot to do with that. He's only played in 179 games across his first 4 seasons, but I'm trying, and you know, obviously a lot of his appearances come in garbage time, but to me, his leadership has been key. So again, to me, he is one of the most important pieces on this team, because, you know, when you see players like Malcolm Brogdon, Jonas Valanciunas, Kyle Kuzma, a lot of these vets on the team are going to be moved at some point, and there's going to be a youth movement, and you need a guy like Anthony Gill to be that glue guy, to be that voice of reason for these young guys, because yes, we should give these young guys more responsibility and definitely look to put your future starting 5 in there. You know, obviously, I mentioned it before the video. This is not the in-game roster. You know, 2025, we're going to add 1, hopefully 2 high impact players, you know, whether it's Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, the list goes on. And in 2026 is also very important, because you have marquee names like, you know, Cam Boozer. So these next 2 drafts are going to be very essential in finding 2 to 3 more players to add to our future starting 5. But building chemistry in our future starting 5 is very pivotal. But you need veteran guys like Anthony Gill. And why is that very important? Because number 2, my second point, you don't have to break the bank to have leadership in the locker room. You know, that's why I mentioned Deshaun Tate. You look at Anthony Gill. These are guys who don't require a lot of salary for them to be the voice of the locker room. You got a guy who is very familiar. Look, Anthony Gill's been here through the Bradley Beal era. He's been through every era, whether it was from, you know, playing for the 8th spot or playing to now rebuild. He's been with his organization through both eras, whether it's Bradley Beal or now in the new era under Will Dawkins and company. So he's a guy who's seen it all with the Washington Wizards. He's a guy who he can appreciate the direction. So like I said, I'm high on Anthony Gill. I think he's a really cool cat. I met a couple of times at the practice facility. He's a really, really good guy. UVA guy, so he's a local guy, but he's a guy who he's been that veteran voice for this team for some time. And definitely, again, happy birthday to him, man. Definitely 32 years young. So definitely shout out to my guy, Anthony Gill. But to me, he's one of the most important pieces in the team. And so definitely intrigued to see what he can do with this young core, because eventually they will get younger. So all right, everybody, we covered a lot tonight, man. But obviously tomorrow, looking forward real quick tomorrow will be the preseason finale against the New York Knicks, man. So definitely, again, we will be going live at 7:00 game. So looking around 9:30, 10 o'clock, probably closer to 9:30 will be the time where we go live. And look, we're going to start off the weekend like we always do. Now, real quick before we move forward and end the video, the regular season is here. So let's take a look at next week is the first week of the NBA regular season for the Washington Wizards. And looking forward, Thursday, October 24th, home against the Boston Celtics. That will be a 7:00 game. And then Saturday will be at home against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, and then we'll be going on the road the week after, and we'll definitely get into that when the time comes. But look, y'all, the regular season is here. So it's going to be a long year, but look, I look forward to chopping up with you guys, having fun. And look, it's going to be a good year, y'all. We're going to have a lot of fun this year. So definitely tune in with Locked On Wizards, man, because we're going to have a good time. Look, we ain't going to be very good, but it's all right, man, because look, we're going to see a lot of progression from this young talent, especially Be Cool. So, all right, y'all, I'm going to call it a night. I will see you guys tomorrow night after tomorrow night's preseason finale versus the New York Knicks. Hail to the Wizards and peace. See you guys later.